This is the fourth policy dialogue organized by the Education Forum Sri Lanka. It's a relatively new entity established by Sujata and myself just about 6 or 7 months ago. So this is our fourth dialogue, like I said. So in terms of introductions of everybody, I'm not going to take a lot of time on that because all of us are, I think, self-introduced through the name tags. So therefore, I will straight away go to the agenda, which all of you have seen so far. Actually, today's policy dialogue is going to center on on a very important topic, and it's based on the national examination system of Sri Lanka. That's the existing national examination system, and we are going to work towards the discussion where we will kind of discuss the possibility of a national assessment framework with accountability built in. So just to set context, we all know we have 3 national exams in Sri Lanka. We have the qualified scholarship exam, we have the ordinary level and the advanced level. Generally speaking, there have been a lot of criticisms leveled at these exams by a variety of people over time, such as that these examinations are highly competitive, the burdens placed on the students are enormous. Do we actually test what students know, or do we try to test what they don't know? Do we test factual recall and memory, or do we test their skills or competencies or learning outcomes? So it's a mixed bag of issues which everybody poses in regards to the examination system. And of course, central to all of that is the constant problem, this constant accusation that the students have to cope with whichever the exam we are talking about. So to add to all of that, this is a question that I have always grappled with. In whatever way we look at the Sri Lankan education system, whether it's going to be reformed, framework, in whatever way, could we also contextualize it in a global setting? How would our examination system sit in a global context? Can we confidently say that our examination system are on par with how what we would call an ideal exam system would be that I'm putting at the end. So we start with Dr. Sujata Gamage. She will present 3 or 4 very important slides that she has put into a very nice framework can be developed. That's how she will start. She will take you through slide by slide. Be free to ask her soon after she finishes. If there are no issues and if those are clear, we then move on to Dr. Upali Mampitiya, whom I will introduce. He's going to expand on Sujata's slides as well as give his own expertise and input on the topic they're discussing. Dr. Upali Mampitiya is a senior lecturer in the Department of Mathematics at the Open University of Sri Lanka. He is also a member of the Standing Committee on Quality Assurance of the UGC. In 2014, he assisted the National Education Commission in a study which aimed to look at curriculum development in general education. A summary of his key competence and key issues connected to his CV. And with that, I think we can start off and have this dialogue in whatever language anyone is free to discuss. The presentations will be in, Sujata's will be in English. I'm not very sure about Dr. Mampitiya's presentation. However, the discussion can be open in any language. So please feel free to ask any question in Sinhala or in English or in Tamil as we move on. So in terms of housekeeping, I think we all generally know what it is like. When you want to ask a question, please unmute your mic. And if you can operate the raise hand button, that will be very useful during the discussion. the discussion to go on for nearly 1.5 hours, at the end of which Sujata and I will just try to capture everybody's input and summarize what ends we reach today at the end of the discussion. Thank you. And with that, can I invite Sujata to please start?
Okay, thank you, Tara. And I'm sharing the screen now. Okay, right. All right. So actually this, also I need to add to what Tara said. We are really looking to submit a policy brief on reforms to exams. It has to be done very quickly because we have education front, and they get our ideas, and also in the public domain, and have a some exposure to these ideas. So actually, in our notice, we talk about three exams, but we can't just, there's this notion that we should, grade 5 scholarship. Some people are very passionate, and some say we should remove it, some say 8, so on. But I think the problem is, when you take time, we really need to think that, we need to think about the children who start in and who move on, and we need to think of the whole system, national examination system, and we really need to frame pathways for children to know, and you to know where, from what point, one point where they could, what are the options available to them. Unfortunately, in Sri Lanka, we really don't have a map like that, if I'm not mistaken. And I remember the Tertiary and Vocational Education Commission, I was a Director General for a while, and we, everywhere, even then, I'm sure even now, we've been toying with various diagrams to show these various pathways. And I think this is an opportunity to come up with something like that. So that's why I said reforming national examination system in Sri Lanka. And I think what we need is a consensus on some assessment framework. And of course, whatever we propose, accountability is a must, because we have to identify who's going to do this. Otherwise, you can come up with all kinds of good ideas, but we need to know who will carry it forward. So there's a 4th policy dialogue and so on. So I think, to me, I'm starting with accountability. It is the current norm. See, if you think of the 1,709 live births, and give or take some, let's say 370,000 or 360,000 children, this cohort will turn 18 in 2020. At some point in 2020, they'll turn 18. We do have any idea of where they are. I think but something we know is that 7% of them, actually 2018, 7.4 of the 19 to 24-year-old group. So, I mean, on average, every cohort, we can say 7.47% will go to a public university. The percent was way back about 10 years ago, it's about 5%, now it's increased. So we know that 7% are going to go to the universities. But the other 93%, I think they're really off the radar. Let's see why I say this. This is a diagram we developed, and it gives the age range from, I will start from the bottom, 0 to 5, and then it ends up with 21 to 22 range. And if you go to the right to the top, this is where I mean by the 7%. I put UGC there. We all know, we talk about UGC admissions, who goes to UGC, who gets selected, Z-score and all that. There's a lot of discussion. And then there's another silo here, which I call TVEC, Tertiary and Vocational Education Commission. There are a lot of institutions under their regulation. I put it in light gray, because I think they are also somewhat off the radar. When I say off the radar, I mean attention of the policymakers and the public. because it's a second option. Parents, even a minister I heard recently say, "Balannoko mata hambune me mekane kamak nae ithin kiyana." Right? So that's an attitude. So I think that's why I think even these students, Mr. Surveera can say something about this, but I think they're off the radar. Even the numbers are not as widely known. Institutions, there are so many institutions, colleges of technology, technical colleges, but there's not much known about this and who these students are. We don't know them, and of course, there's a huge gray area. We really don't know where these 18 to 22-year-olds are, what they're doing. But let me start at the beginning. Again, this framework. At the bottom, early childhood education and early childhood development and early childhood education, I put it in also in light gray. Because even there, we really don't know much about that area. Then, of course, primary, we know once children go to school, there's so much interest in year one admission and so on. So the next 4 layers, we know quite a bit about them. Primary, there are 4 subjects and the children do 4 subjects. It's general education, activity-based oral English is there. The junior secondary, the children do 13 subjects. There are 13 subjects on offer and children do all 13 subjects. Senior secondary, actually, NIE would prepare lesson curricula for about 51 subjects, and students can select 9 of those. That is senior secondary. And then you have the collegiate level, which is grade 12 to 13. Actually, there are about 95 subjects that the NIE works on. Because recently, I talk more about it because a new set of vocational subjects were also offered. Of course, not all these are for tested at national level, but then students typically choose about 3 subjects, but in the vocational stream, it's I think the numbers of subjects vary. So we have 3 streams: the academic stream, technological stream, and the vocational stream. So these I put in lighted area. We know so much about these areas, but you can see there are some dark areas. Each of these layer, this 370,000, I don't know how many when they enter school, how many entered school in 2002, 2007 rather. These children are born in 2002. So, but whatever, there's a dropout rate. And when I last checked, by the time they sit for the GCA O level at the end of grade 11, about 15% have dropped off. So that number may have improved or gotten worse. I don't know. But of this 85%, then another, we know about 70%. Now the pass rates at the O level have been increasing. So another 70% passed the O level. So that means of the total, any questions? Of the total cohort, but 40% drop off at this point, and they go into the dark area. We don't know what happens to them. And of course, after grade 13, UGC takes care of whoever is brought to their doorstep, the universities. TVC tries its best to recruit, and there's a lot of, I think, turnover in that sector. And number of graduates, I think, is much less than the number who enroll. So I just do not put the numbers there. But the rest of it, I mean, I include TVC. This 93%, I don't think they get enough attention. They are off the radar. And I think if you look at Singapore system, they do give the Minister of Education, at the first page, they give this pathway for these children, and there are no dark areas. Each cohort, there's a place for them to fit in their youth, that is from 18 to 22. So I think when we talk about reforming exam system, we really need to, it's very important to develop this framework and have the pathways for each identified. Actually, when I say off the radar, but I think there's a new development where the school system is now giving us unique student ID to each student. So we have started tracking. Now each student sitting in the grade 5 scholarship exam will have a unique student ID. So we have a way of tracking students now. So I think there should be a system to track students from their actually birth to at least when they are 22, the youth group. And they should be given, all the options should be up there in one framework. So hopefully through our work, we can actually come up with some proposal like that. And I like to get your thoughts on that. So proposed accountability framework, I think it should be something like this. MOE means so the responsibility column is a third column. I think there has to be some authority for early childhood. It could be within the Ministry of Education, which is the School Education Authority. But right now, we have the TVC dealing with only, those who register in their institutions. And we have the UGC dealing with only with those coming to universities. But I think at each level, so we are actually divided vertically into silos. I think there has to be some division where it's actually there's authority, there's a responsibility at a horizontal level. So these, we have to think about who this authority would be. But also, for example, let's say from early childhood, then you go to primary, junior, secondary, that part is pretty much covered. But we know that after O-level, grade 11, there some are going to go out into the world of work, or what we call NEET, not in employment, education, or training. On the job training is what I put here, green and NEET. And right now, actually, we have an organization to deal with this. That is the National Youth Services. I think it's a highly underutilized organization. In fact, I think one idea is that National Youth Services really should be dealing with all ages 16 to 22, not giving them education, but keeping track of them. For example, like Ministry of Education database, they hand it over to the National Youth Service. When all 16-year-old on their database is handed to them. So they are tracked and they are given career guidance and they are given all the options available to them from the time they're 16 or when they leave grade 11. So right now, we have for when they're 11, after senior secondary, only thing we know about is advanced secondary or collegiate level, and we have the, as I said before, academic, technical, and vocational tracks we have. And the vocational track is new, but there's still people who are going into technical and vocational education sector. And I think all these options should be on one place, because student, when somebody turns 16, you're thinking in terms of a 16-year-old. And a 16-year-old, all the options should be available there. So I put this as a, whatever is under TVC, they should be all under one umbrella. And when a student leaves school or at 16, they should be able to go to some site and find out all the options available to them, given the pathways. And so those are details, but I think when we talk about reforming these exams here, that's a discussion today, we need to keep that big picture in mind and always remember that when we changes to the O-level, that they'll be going to this. There are 3 pathways. They will be going onto the academic, technical, vocational within the school. They'll be going out of the school to various. There are so many certificate courses. There are trade for computer science. There are so many trade level courses, or they'll be going into work, or they'll be just going. They'll be not in employment, education, or training. But we have to remember that when we think about any reforms to the ordinary level also, are they prepared for these 3 pathways? So that's a sort of, I think, and accountability, I think, would be on one level, it should be at a horizontal level, there should be some authority responsible for all keeping track of and regulating all qualifications. For example, tertiary year 1, usually, I think Upali can expand on that. On the qualification framework, this would be a diploma level, and tertiary year 2, higher diploma. And I would actually go under here, below that would be 2 levels of certificates. In the New Zealand and Australian qualification system, you have certificate level 1 and certificate level 2, and then diploma, higher diploma, and then degree. So, so there are these levels, and we really, I know the TVET side has articulated this, and but we need that articulated and there should be one authority, one ministry. It doesn't have to be one ministry, at least a council of ministers who is responsible for this whole framework. And then all the students, I think nobody should be, we can't have any child or youth left behind, because this is our precious resource. And I think there has to be some sort of handshake after the 16-year-old. They should be under the care, this whole database should be under the care of somebody. And I think National Youth Services is the ideal body for place for that. As I said, they will be offering programs or regulating programs, but they will be keeping track. So now within this framework, today we'll be focusing on these primary, junior secondary, and senior secondary. We know at the end of primary, we have the grade 5 scholarship. At the end of junior secondary, we have the GC O-level. And at the end of senior secondary, at the junior secondary, we don't have a national exam. At the end of senior secondary, we have the GC O-level. I think the next slide would be, yes, this is the current national assessment framework. I don't know whether anybody's put it in one place like this, but this is the sort of framework we have in Sri Lanka. I think it's evolved. I don't think anybody put this in one place and looked at, okay, this is what we are offering for this level, and this is how they go on to the other level. Primary, there are 5 subjects: language, math, 4 subjects rather: language, math, environment, and religion. I have this religion shaded here because that's not actually part of the national scholarship exam. Scholarship exams test students on all 3 areas, in addition to these general intelligence questions. I'll talk more about that, about the structure of the scholarship exam and what changes we are proposing there. Junior secondary, there are 13 subjects. They're not tested at the national level. Provincial exams, I think the 3rd term, there's a provincial exam. I think other terms, it's at the school level. And I think at the 2nd term, it's at the zonal level. So there again, language, math, science, English, history, religion, it's not really identified as a core, but I put them there because to parallel with what is considered the core at the senior secondary. And then geography, citizenship, second language, aesthetics, ICT, practical and technical skills, and health and physical education. So 13 subjects children do, and they're tested for each and every one. I think Ms. Pushpika Aberatna will correct me if I'm wrong. One child actually called me one day. She had heard me speak somewhere, and she had sent a message, "Ane ame auntie mukut karanna baida me gana ai me හැම විෂයටමයි හැම teacherම homework දෙන්නේ කියලා." I think 13 subjects, I think, to be tested as as subjects that are to be tested. I think we need to think about that. And the senior secondary, there are 51 subjects that are offered by the Department of Examination. And the core is there, and then there's a group 1 basket. Students take 1 from there, and group 2, they select 1 from each of these. If you go to the advanced secondary, actually only 60 subjects are offered by the exams department. Of those, academic, I call academic, this 51 here and 51 here is a coincidence. I think the same number of subjects. These numbers could slightly change. I got these numbers in 2017. And the technological stream, they offer 9 subjects, and I compared them with international, the Cambridge EdExcel. These are, we offer a lot more subjects than those international exams. And technological, 9 subjects. And the new vocational stream, there are 9 core subjects and 26 areas of vocational specializations. So these are not offered for national exams. They are all for school-based assessments. So actually altogether, there's 90, I think 60, 69, 75, 95 actually added. So there are, think about this. When you put this in framework, I am astounded. I don't know about you, but I'm පුදුම හිතාගන්න අපේ ජාතික අධ්‍යාපන ආයතනයට කොයිතරම් මේ ඔක්කොටම කරිකියුලම් ලියන්න ඕන. මේ ඔක්කොටම ගුරුවරු පුහුණු කරන්න ඕන. මේක අපි ඇත්තටම රටක් හැටියට අපිට කරන්න පුළුවන්ද? හොඳට කරන්න පුළුවන්. Can we do a good job doing all this? So that's I think something to think about. When put all this in one frame, and if I put all these subjects, I did not put the subjects of 51 subjects, 9 and this 25 here because there wasn't enough room. But we really need to think about the number of subjects that we really expect our NIE to handle, and whether they can, and the exams department to handle, and whether they can do a quality job. If you're reforming the exam, that's, I think, reducing the number is something we need to think about. So the assessment framework, guiding principle, reduce, reduce, reduce. Adu karanna, adu karanna, adu karanna. This is I think I put it 3 times for emphasis. Because when they sell houses, they say what's the most important thing? They say location, location, location. So it's the same idea. And testing of subject knowledge at national level, reduce the testing, reduce the national level exams, and time spent studying for tests. And national exams should be only one of many other things that we assess. So this is a framework that's been in discussion again. It's a completion certificate we're talking about. So national level exams will be only one part of it. There'll be 4 components, at least 4 components and that will comprise a primary school. Is my connection okay? You can hear? Yeah, good. Okay. I'm taking quite good. Yeah, primary, this is the last slide. Primary school certificate, then junior secondary school certificate. I think at each stage, children should be given a certificate. And national level aptitude exam. I mean, we already have aptitude exams. Actually, called the scholarship exam started as aptitude exam. Tara, how much time do I have? I think it's good.
5 minutes.
5 minutes, okay. Aptitude exam started as started as an aptitude exam in 1944, testing general intelligence, literacy, and numeracy. In 1995, they added the subject with the children. They want to know whether children have learned what they were taught in school, because they felt that children were not, the teachers were not paying attention. So it was made into a what's called attainment exam. What is the children have learned. Aptitude is their the potential, and abhiyogatawe මේක සාධනය ඉගෙන ගත්තද කියන එක. So these two, actually, I think this part is really the part that's creating problems for children, or really distorting our education, because there's so much rote learning that goes on. The environment subject is totally distorted. It should be environmental activities, environment related activities, but it has become just an environment, facts about the environment. So I think the scholarship exam could be divided into 2, and this part, the attainment part, can be removed. That's the first major proposal in that it should be taken back to aptitude exam, and this attainment part, which involves a lot of rote learning and memorization of facts, can be taken out. So, and the SAT 4, I put scholastic aptitude test 4 is for the GCA level. We already have something called common general test, CGT. So that can be actually modified. At every step, you are checking to see whether the students have the aptitude to go to the next level, the literacy, numeracy level, that they need to go to the next level. These 2 are new, SAT 2 and SAT 3, but I think it will be useful to know at each stage. This is after grade, this is at grade 11, this is at grade 10. Because children can sometimes just do this exam and not worry about the GCO level even. Some children can do the SAT and just mark their, get a pass there, and they can do school-based assessment, which is in the lighter part. So national level exams, reducing national level exams, I think, so Upali is going to expand on this area, but I'm not going to talk about it. He's going to talk about GCO level and how these actually get played out. So some of the other assessments are going to be at I say there are 4 components. First component is national level aptitude test. Then there's a second component, national level attainment test, which should not be carried out for small children in primary or junior secondary, but it should be only for older kids. And it should be, the number of subjects should be reduced. And at the school level, some of the subjects need to be assessed by paper and pencil. They should be done in a summative method, but most other subjects should be formative assessments using journals, field books, portfolios. For example, junior secondary, that is grade 6 to 9, 6 core subjects, but the other 7 subjects are just really about social, behavioral, emotional changes to children. So they can be integrated into themes, whatever, and they should not be tested. Right now, tests are carried out for all 7. So so this is the sort of broad framework, which is to reduce the number of subjects tested at the national level, and also that will remove the time spent studying for tests. And again, Upali has done comparisons, what we do and what's internationally. He'll talk more using the grades 11 to years 10 to 11. Years as an example, cassette expand. So basically the idea is, don't make these national exams the only criterion. Let's have something like a school leaving certificate, completion certificates, and let them have several components. 4 components I'm suggesting here. And let in this last area, there can be a lot of, let the schools experiment and come up with new methods. So, and particularly this area, attainment, formative assessment, these subjects where you really, children are learning as integrated way, using their observations and using field books and portfolios. This is really where we get a chance to give them what are called these transversal competencies, soft competencies or what. That's a very important area for that. So this is a broad framework. A lot more work has to be done. And I think that's the last slide.
Thank you, Sujata. There was one question that had been posed on the chat line, which is what you think is the reason for this dropout rate. You said at the time of the O-level, we have about a 15% dropout. What do you think is the reason for that? So after that question, your answer, we can go to Dr. Mampitiya's presentation.
Okay. Actually, I really have not looked at that. Anybody in the audience? Can't I really have not thought about it. No. 15. Let me give one idea. I think children are bored. I mean, it's so hard for some children to fit into these teaching methods. It's so test oriented, paper and pencil, apaganna ahar, what nutritious meal. It's a list. It's never related to what children eat at home. Children can make charts at home, what they eat, at school, what they eat, and really learn by doing. Who is a good citizen? It's a list. It's a list of things that the teacher puts on the board and the children write down. So I think our way of teaching and the curriculum, and particularly the test-oriented, exam-oriented curriculum. The curriculum is not exam-oriented. Exam-oriented teaching is really, I think, making like school incredibly boring for some children. I think that could be one reason, because we provide,
Sorry.
A lot of.
Can Taranga give her opinion? Taranga said she
please. Yeah.
For dropout. Please go ahead, Taranga. Can you unmute your mic? Yeah.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah, can.
Okay, great. So I can give a few reasons. Basically, so we work in vulnerable communities, not in urban areas. So I can talk about girls dropouts.
Can't hear you.
Can't hear, no?
Okay. Let me see what I can do. Is it better?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. I'll just lower myself to match the microphone. Basically, some of the reasons for girls dropouts are the fact that the mothers are migrating. So they have to drop out from school and look after the families. And there is also the peer pressure where, you know, some of the girls are not presentable enough in school. Some of them face extreme poverty, so they don't have enough equipment, or, you know, just can't afford to come to school. So extreme poverty, migration are some of the reasons for these dropouts. And, you know, there are a lot of other issues like teen pregnancies, for example. Those are a few other issues as well for girls dropouts. I don't know about boys though, to be honest.
Are these backed by any research studies, Taranga, or are these like data that you have collected at random?
I'm not really sure whether we have facts in our organization, but these are issues that we come across every day in our girls' education program in secondary school.
So we have Mr. Nigel Gray, hand is up, and also Sifans. Can we have Nigel, please?
Yeah, so just a quick question to Dr. Sujata. So firstly, it was quite interesting to see how you know, we could reduce the time that students usually spend studying for exams, because like by restructuring the number of subjects that you test them on. But one question that I also have is about tuition classes in general, where that's actually like a very big market in Sri Lanka. So even though, say, the number of subjects that you test students on in school reduces, but there could be multiple tuition classes even for the same subject that students go to, which also for a large proportion of their day. So is there any idea that anyone could have in terms of how we sort of circumvent that issue as well? Because generally going to tuition classes or multiple tuition classes doesn't necessarily result in a better score if you don't have time to reflect on that information that's being taught.
Yeah, I think the number of subjects, but even I think again, maybe Dr. Ginigi or Dr. Mampitiya also can give their input. I think just the content in the whether we have reducing the number of subjects and also reducing the content in the subject. I think Dr. Mampitiya will come to that. You know, when you reduce the number of, when you give more hours to more integrated teaching, you know, we give for other activities, project-based activities in the classroom, you will have to reduce the amount of content. But I think Dr. Mampitiya will come to that.
Yeah. So shall we take that up after his presentation? I think Stefan had a question.
Not really a question, but on that dropout thing, there was I attended a presentation sometime back. I can't remember the name and where it was, but it was, I think, something about a follow-up study on some World Bank program, and they were doing some research on the efficacy of that, and that research had thrown up some information about people dropping out. And I think the big dropout tends to happen after the legal compulsory schooling is completed, so after the 14 or whatever. And it doesn't seem to be due to whether the teacher was good or things like that, but their sort of hypothesis at the end of it was that it's to do with mostly finances, where the boys leave school to start earning to support the family, and the reason why they stay on even so long is because otherwise they're going to be in trouble if they leave early.
So poverty becomes a reason in addition to all the other reasons that we discussed.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Any other quick comments before we go on to Dr. Mampitiya's presentation?
Can I just quickly add one more comment?
Yeah. Is that Taranga? Yes. Taranga.
So one more comment is that when children reach the secondary school in impoverished communities, we have to realize that their parents haven't also most likely continued education beyond secondary education or primary education. So they don't really see a reason to complete school. They'd rather learn how to read and write and then start doing a job so that they can support their families. So that's another reason. Thank you.
And I think we need, if they see a pathway, they would encourage their children to stay in school, because right now the pathway they see is, do the A-level and then go to university, and they know it's not going to be their path. So I think really identifying paths would be from early age, from age 12, 14, would be very important, I think.
Okay, Dr. Mampitiya, can I invite you then to make your presentation, please?
Thank you very much, Dr. Tara. First of all, I'd like to thank Dr. Sujata for giving me this opportunity to share my views on the topic. So let me start sharing the screen now. Yeah. I have given this title, Senior Secondary Curriculum for Tomorrow's World. I know it's a broad one, but I want to do today is to actually, as Sujata mentioned, we can restructure senior secondary education, the education without compromising the recognition we would have for the GCE O-level qualification. So that's pretty much the definition of my today's talk. It's actually a small part of I delivered the CWW Kannagara Memorial Lecture 30th lecture last year, 2019. So this is a small component of my lecture. I delivered that. It's available in this NI website. So just I have a few slides. Let me go through. We all know that we have inherited this British-based education system. So we are in the British education system. And we have 13 years of schooling in 4 cycles: primary, junior secondary, senior secondary, and other one we call collegiate. And the grade 10 and 11 are meant for senior secondary education, and those incorporate the GCE O-level examination. Since actually my presentation is based on the mainly I'm going to support Sujata's claim actually, so that's what I'm going to do. Based on mainly one aspect is the volume of learning that the students would have, right? So I want to highlight, I have to quantify the number of periods that we have for one school year. So it's basically numbers. We have 210 days, school days, and on each day we have 8 periods. So 210 into 8, we have 1,680 periods, classroom periods for a year. So based on that, I'm going to argue like this. So this is, you saw actually this is from Sujata's slide. So this is the current structure for senior secondary curriculum. We have 6 core subjects and 3 optional subjects. And I also want to bring your attention to this table where you have different periods, actually number of periods for different subjects. So as a result, they are not equally weighted. So basically, the weightage is dependent on the learning time. So you can see, I want you to see, they are differently weighted. Religion has only 2 periods, whereas mathematics and science 6. So basically, we have to treat those things actually have different sizes, which we don't do. For example, when we grade our GCL, we say 8 days, so 9, 1B, and so on. So one argument that I'm going to make is actually, we cannot do that one on that basis, because the learning is proportionate to the time that they spend on each subject. Then this is one, and then yeah. So my next slide. Yeah. So basically, Ministry of Education has given the time allocation for 9 subjects required, and then each of the subjects taught in the senior secondary cycle is considered as a component of the GCE O-level qualification. Therefore, in Sri Lanka, senior secondary education has essentially become a training program for the GCE O-level examination. Senior secondary O-level class. So basically, as 2 sets, they are coinciding. Ideally, GCE O-level should be a subset of senior secondary education. Unfortunately, in Sri Lanka, which is not the case. That's what I want to highlight. Right. So this is a global situation. You know that again, as Dr. Tara mentioned earlier, I'm a member of the Quality Assurance Standing Committee of the UGC, where I help the UGC with this qualification matters, because I was involved in drafting the Sri Lanka qualification framework. So during that stage, I had the opportunity to look at the qualifications requirements from different countries. Just like we have the bachelor's level, master's level, PhD study program, qualifications rather. GC O level and GC A level are also qualifications. They have their international specifications. So what I want to highlight is our specifications are much more rigorous than what is required. So basically, we have to see whether we should be there in the first place. So that's my point here. Basic information. There are several countries offering O-level qualification, including Sri Lanka. And this is a pathway, yeah. And the last slide is important. As a global qualification in most countries, the number of subjects required to be passed by a student to earn the qualification is either 5 or 6. So that's the norm. Not that they can do 9 and 10, that's all right. But the requirement is this one. So now, I'm not saying, what I want to say is that in our country, asking every student to do 9 is not right, based on this international. So then, yeah, these other things. So one aspect that we consider in, the classifying qualifications, the volume of learning is very important. Now, we know our bachelor's degrees are either 3 years or 4 years. We have master's degree, 1 year master's, 2 year master's. So in the university system, we define the workload by credits. But in the school level, we don't do it. But in the school level also, there are some specifications related to this volume of learning. So study programs leading to the qualification GCO level, they are, well-defined workload of studies in terms of the time. So then this is the important second bullet. So GCO level qualification offered in the UK Kingdom, UK, has specifications requiring a subject syllabus to have 130 guided learning hours for the duration of the entire study program. That means even 2 years. So basically, for ideally in our terms, each subject should have only 130, not should actually, minimum 130 guided learning hours. So the guided learning hours are also defined in this manner. It's like a face-to-face time with the teacher. And obviously, students will have to put their own study time. That's separate. So this is the norm. So let's see where we are in the next slide. Yeah, I'm comparing this with the Sri Lankan situation. So since that specification is in hours, I have converted into the school period. So 130 hours of guided learning hours would be equivalent to 195 periods in Sri Lanka, right? So basically then, if you just multiply 6 core subjects, 195 into 6, you get 1,170 periods, the requirement to offer internationally accepted GCO level qualification in Sri Lanka. So when you divide it by 2, because we have 2-year period, the number of periods required for a year is 585. This is minimum basically, but I want to highlight the fact how much we are overdoing. So that means really, so the minimum total classroom time required is 35% of the full period. I'm not saying that we should have 35, but on the other hand, there's a ministry circular requiring the schools to spend 36 out of 40 periods for a week on level qualification subjects. So that comes to 90%. So 90% of the total periods in a school year is allocated for GCO level. So we have to see where we should be actually and what we are missing. So this may be the reason why students are burdened and all that. So we have to address and change the structure of the senior secondary education. One is to reduce the student workload, and also other things to achieve this, what NEC says is the national goals. You see, I'm not touching that side now, but NEC guidelines say the school system should help for students to achieve these national goals, 9 national goals via 7 basic competencies, right? So we have to see whether that's happening currently. Now, the next slide is again still the comparison. In most countries, I would say national curriculum is a subset of the entire curriculum, right? So in addition to the national curriculum, a range of cross-curricular and the co-curricular, extracurricular activities are included, but unfortunately not in our case. Therefore, my position is actually we have to identify what the whole curriculum is and what the core curriculum is. So that's what I'm going to suggest here. So in such a structure, the core component would be the subject requirement for the GCE O-level qualification. The other component would provide learning opportunities for students to develop their skills, which cannot be done through traditional subjects such as communication, decision making, here listed. Yeah, transnational. transversal skills chart. Yeah. So basically, this is actually what I'm going to propose next is just not my idea. I had the opportunity to serve in a certain committee appointed by the Ministry of Education in 2017 when I was the chairman of the Academic Affairs Board of the NIE. So we submitted a report. So in that report, this new structure I'm going to show the next slide was proposed actually. So we have to keep in mind. So what we had to do at that stage was to actually not to bring radical changes, but to have some incremental changes to the existing system so that we can move from the current stage to the next immediate stage. Maybe that can be further refined in the future. Yeah, so this is the proposed structure. So we were proposing in our report, we will make 6 core subjects. They are all equally weighted in terms of learning outcomes and the content here. So the proposal is to have these 6 subjects which are related, not identical, related to the current 6 core subjects. So then only those 6 subjects will form the GC O-level qualification. Then again, we didn't want to deviate much from the existing system, from this optional subject baskets. In fact, in one of the NEC reports, they recommend that the 3 groups to be reduced to 2 the baskets. So we took that into account and proposed we have other subjects and activities on these lines: aesthetic studies, technical studies, second language, health and physical education, ICT, and extracurricular activities. But the most important thing is these are not part of GC O-level qualification, and they are assessed primarily through portfolios via SBA system, as Sujata suggested. I mean, that's one thing that we do. So in that way, you can see by looking at it, the examination burden of students will be reduced. And also something that we found actually not in one of our surveys in 2017, that the students have 9 subjects right now. As I said, at that stage, these subjects are not equally weighted. For example, Buddhism is taught only 2 periods, where math is taught 6 periods. But the students don't know when they prepare for an examination, they put the same amount of time. Right? So because they write similar examinations. But ideally, we should guide the students to say, okay, this is the amount of time you should spend on this one, like in the university system. But it's not there. So as a result, the student burden is heavier because without knowing, they put the same amount of time they put for mathematics for other subjects as well. So that guidance I have not seen in the system. So that's why we wanted to make sure all these 6 subjects are equally weighted. So we put it that way, and also then the other 10 periods like this. So basically, this will make GC O-level qualification requirements are delivered in 75% of the time, because 30 out of 40. So 35 was the minimum required. Now we are doing 90%, but whereas we are proposing 75% for GC. My personal feeling, we wish actually this can be further reduced, but we have to do a study before we do that one. Yeah, so then what happens if we do this one? So in the proposed structure, under the optional components, we allow students to learn topics like this, as I said. And also, in addition, the ICT, physical education, those things are also opportunities are given. Yeah. So learning of these subjects would be primarily assessed through portfolios. Yeah. But they will not be considered as part of GC O-level qualification, as I said in that slide. Yeah. Then, yeah. So this is also important. This type of curriculum reforms at the senior secondary level would help reduce the academic burden on students, and at the same time increase the quality of learning while safeguarding the global recognition of the GCL qualifications, because these things are in line with the international specifications. That's what I want to highlight. Also, most importantly, it will contribute to the development of a citizen who can function proactively in society, as expected by one of the NEC reports, I would say. So yeah. So that's my presentation. It's again to support what Sujata said earlier, restructuring the secondary education so that our students can benefit from that. Thank you.
Thanks very much. So with that, I think we have really kept to time because we have a good, we are 3:30 now, so we can go on till 5 o'clock. We have exactly close to 1.5 hours for a discussion. So could we have a show of hands with regards to who wants to start first? Taranga, your hand is up. May I go first to Reverend Mark Wilimoria and then come back to you?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, just a few points on the presentation. In the proposals of 2017, you have mentioned religion and values. Are we considering a very necessary move to a more general religious education where everyone learns about the religion of the other, rather than a very narrow study of one's own religion, which is perhaps a very important element when we are looking at religious education? Because if I mean, in the present context of the world and even in this country, some of us do feel that it's time we move away from studying our own religions only to a more general study of each other's religions and all religions, so that will lead to more, harmonious coexistence and all that. That's number one. And what? How do these reforms now? These proposed reforms that you have mentioned, how will they fit in with what is being proposed even at this present time by the task force on general education reforms? Because there seem to be some, I mean, I'm on that, and I know that there are some very radical reforms coming or being proposed, shall we say. There's a difference between proposals and implementation, as I told His Excellency the President at the meeting last week. We can propose a lot of things, but the implementation is where the crux of the matter lies. You see, there are a lot of very far-thinking reforms coming at all levels of general education, including this. So, are we able to feed some of this thinking into this process? And how do we join hands, as it were? Because obviously what we want to do is to fall in line with what children in other parts of the world are experiencing, while at the same time we retain something of our own as well. But it's pretty clear that what we have as our own has a number of flaws in terms of the child-friendly nature of education. So I just want your comment on that. And finally, the whole area of the link between senior secondary and collegiate level. One of the things that as educators we have begun to realize is that children before they come to A level need to know or start on the track before they come to A level. So if you're looking at a science stream, you should perhaps look at that at senior secondary level rather than wait until you finish O levels to look at it. Is that something that should be considered along with the process? So just some thoughts and a couple of questions on this. Yeah. Thank you.
Actually now regarding the first question, basically now there was some members in that committee who were proposing this the details about this religion and value education. Now remember, I'm not an educationist, so I may not be able to answer these questions in the real manner. Like currently religion is taught 2 periods per week. So it was expanded to 5, including religion plus value education. And they had certain views on how this value education should be. Unfortunately, my background is mathematics, so I could not grasp much. My support was given for these technical details. So what I would say is, I really don't know what would cover under value education. But what is happening is actually what is proposed is religion currently taught 2 periods. It is expanded to religion and value education. So something else will be completed. So the second question was regarding the current education task force. I'm not actually aware of what they are doing right now because I'm not part of that circle. So hopefully Sujata can actually bring this to their attention if possible, right? Yeah, in a formal manner. So, but anyway, so I have informed them that my ideas regarding this, saying that they can read the CWW Jayasri Memorial, Karnangara Memorial Lecture that I delivered. So all these things are recorded explicitly. Yeah. Right, that's one.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
The third one, sorry. Yeah.
Can I just add one? I think one of the things Reverend Bilgoria was trying to ask Dr. Mampitiya is in the context of teaching religion with values or religion per se, whether there is a place for comparative religions. Am I correct?
Correct. That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, if I remember correctly, that was one possibility. Yeah, it came up because the detailed syllabuses were not drafted, but I think that is how the value education was interpreted in that committee.
Thanks.
I have a clarification to ask Upali.
Yes,
actually, if you're, I'm not sure whether we need to weight these subjects equally, because I looked at in the UK and the time devoted in the classroom, and in Singapore, actually it's not necessarily, yes, I mean, you say 1A in a certain subject and you give an A in another subject, but the time spent is not necessarily equalized. So I don't know whether that's really a necessary thing to do.
So then obviously we have to introduce GPA, grade point average. That's what I'm saying here. So you know, in Singapore they have grade point average. They have that scheme. So I mean, this is why I mean, obviously we introduce the grade point average to actually sort of change that anomaly. You know. So I mean, the point here is actually differently weighted subjects cannot have. I mean, the grades are not represented equally. That's what I point.
Right, because science subjects you need more time, and
but it's
mathematics.
Actually one way to look at is actually learning time. Now remember, this is the teaching part, so we should separate them. So I mean, that's another reason. Earlier, I remember somebody was asking about this tuition. I think one observation that I have made is in the NIE syllabus, they give the number of periods required to teach this component, but they never look at how much of time an average student would need for them to understand this one and compute this notional learning time. So if you do that, then you will realize how much time the students would need to come to understand the syllabus or learn the syllabus. So that part has not been done. So then only we can, if we do that one, we can really see the student burden.
So so if you take mathematics, that's your subject, you think that what they have in the curriculum you can't teach in this time? Is that, do they have to reduce the content?
No. It's like this. I'm not studied it deeply. They have not done a study and see, because again, it's the average learner. So average learner should be able to do this what is expected in a certain time period. You have to quantify it. So the notional learning hours have not been calculated yet.
I see.
Okay,
they are done only the number of periods of teaching.
So actually the reform should include then actually deciding, you know, this is the time and then how much we should have in the curriculum, what kind of content.
Yes.
Producing.
That's, we have somebody waiting to ask a question. Mr. Gamakara, are you? Your hand is not. Can you hear me?
Yes, I'm Gamakumar.
Please.
Yeah, I can hear you. You can hear me.
Go ahead, please. We can.
Because, right, all right. The thing is actually I was listening to the both thing actually because of the presentation is
You're not clear.
The thing is actually
you're not clear. Is it a problem with your microphone or is it the internet connection?
Yes. The voice is not clear because it is breaking. So, can you hear me? Can I put the distance?
If your internet connection is slow, would you like to try by switching off the video and just talking on the audio in case it's your internet connection that's the problem?
I think, as I told you, I'm far away from Sri Lanka. In the sense, I'm in Melbourne. Many of the resources are in the
Yeah, very sorry, we can't.
I can't hear anything here.
Yeah.
Not clear. Not clear.
Can we have him on chat if he can type up the
Yeah,
comment?
if you can type your question on chat, we can read it out if you don't mind. Until then,
Sorry. Okay. We will now probably.
please type it out. Then we'll go to Mr. Susanta Suravira, who is waiting to ask a question.
Mr. Suravira.
I want to make a comment.
Yes.
Now, so many reforms are talked about, but I am from vocational training. I observe that Sujata explained so much of dropout before coming to O level. Many students come to O level, still do not learn. That's the issue. Because I think reform has not addressed those things, because vocational training, usually those students who are not successful are coming to the O level, but that vocational training. Then I observe they do not have sufficient literacy level. They cannot write well, they cannot read well. Because of that, they cannot do the vocational training program effectively. Because all the students are required to write a diary in vocational training. That is, we call daily diary. Writing diary means, because we give them, because after day's work, they have to write the diary. Requirement is, writing means thinking. Thinking means learning. Because if they cannot write, they do not do thinking. They just work. They do not learn. Therefore, my problem is students are coming to vocational training without good literacy. Numeracy also, that is there. Now, I think reforms, so much of reform have not addressed that part. Thank you. Thank you, Mike.
Can I answer that, Tara?
Please, after that,
Yeah.
After
yeah. Mr. Suravir, I think that's why we have this in the qualification framework. We are proposing an aptitude test, which is a really literacy numeracy at grade 5, grade 9, grade 11, and grade 13. So at least students, they don't have to sit for the GCE level even. They can do the aptitude, and they can do the school-based assessment and the school-based, summative school-based integrated project-based learning. And so they will not be burdened, they will not be putting so much effort into studying for the GCE, but they'll be at least catching up on their numeracy and literacy, which we will catch up, which we will really get a hang up to get an estimate of how they're doing through these national exams, which really are tests of literacy and numeracy at various levels. These are done in other countries, in states. There's something called, all the children have seen for this at grade 5. It's called California Achievement Test. And you test the basic level of literacy and numeracy they're supposed to have at each level. So I think that's why I think it is a must, because we are burdening children with so much quantity, and with the GCO level where they're not actually getting their basics.
Yeah. No.
That's why it's the aptitude test is there in the framework.
Can I comment?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, reality is actually because of this literacy, they cannot do further learning.
Yeah.
Because further learning, they should be able to go to internet and see those things and refer the literature, everything. That is not possible. That means that is the weak area. Right. Thank you.
The things, if I can add, literacy actually now is defined broader. Digital literacy is being able to look for information, sift through and find what's relevant, and synthesize. So literacy is actually has a broader meaning. And so that should address what you're talking about. And I think that's, again, we should focus on the basics when we're testing.
Okay, can I go to Mr. Fowler-Watt, and after that, Mr. R.C. Pereira, whose hand is raised.
Thank you very much. I think Sujata makes a very important point, but not just for vocational reasons, but also for degrees as well. Because I think that what the exams teach, by and large, is how not to think for yourself rather than how to think for yourself. And until there's that fundamental change, I don't believe that anything will happen for the good. And the other thing linked to that, both O-level and A-level, in my view, and indeed grade 5 scholarship, is that the exams are designed really to fail rather than to pass. So there's massive course content. Your average person that was spoken about is struggling just simply to get through. Whereas in other countries in the world, exams are not like that. They're either done at a range of levels, so you take the one appropriate to you, or there's such a range of grades that you don't really fail everybody or a large number, but people might get E's, F's, G's, which universities would regard as a fail, but they're still an assessment and a qualification of some sort. So I think both the quantity of exams and the content of the exams need fundamental change from grade 5 right the way up to A-level and indeed to degree level. Thank you.
Sujata, you want to make a comment on that before we move on?
No, I agree with that. No, I think that's
pretty much what was given, I think, in both of the presentations, how a complete overall is needed in terms of not just the content, but also the quality of the exam. Am I correct?
That's correct, yeah.
But the danger slightly is with what's being recommended. While I like a lot of what has been suggested in terms of lessening the exam load and the pressure on children, the danger in today's world is that if there's too much focus on STEM subjects in particular, actually you're going to make a population that is much less rounded than it needs to be. So you need to balance somehow teaching more, but not putting as much pressure on passing exams. I wish I had a magic wand for that, and I don't know how it can be achieved. But I think reducing it down to 6 subjects, for example, at O-level, is actually potentially getting it down to the lowest common denominator. Because certainly in UK schools, bright kids, and by bright I mean with IQs of over a sort of 100, 110, bright kids would be doing probably 9, 10, 11 GCSEs. And the universities would be expecting that, certainly the Russell Group universities and the decent quality universities. So whilst you might not need, in inverted commas, more than 5 or 6 on paper, in reality, you do need more, and you need good grades as well.
Can I respond to that?
Yeah.
Actually, in Singapore, they don't say, I think Upali can correct me on this, they don't say to pass the GCO level, you need 6 subjects. If a student passes 2 subjects, that's all. That person has to pass.
That's true. That's
and
true,
also,
yeah.
That's true. And if you have this school leaving certificate, a child can opt to have, say, do the SAT, which shows the literacy, numeracy level appropriate for that age group, and would have the school-based assessments and the portfolio and the field books. And that child may choose to may do all 6 subjects, but may have only, or may choose to do a few subjects, select number of subjects at the O-level. And you don't report the other grades. If the person passes 2 subjects, that will be part of their school leaving completion certificate. So the school completion certificate is what's necessary, not getting 6 subjects, passing 6 subjects in O-level. But the school leaving certificate,
But the subject
completion.
Sorry.
So, yeah, so I think the number of subjects, 6 will be I think would be the recommended, maybe not the compulsory. What do you think, Upali? Is that possible?
I agree with the gentleman that again in UK they do, but we have to consider Sri Lankan context. And in Sri Lanka, I know little about it. We have international schools, and there they do GCO level, and see the number of subjects where the student is diverse. It's a comparative thing here, no? So, and also right now in Sri Lanka also 6 subjects are the core subjects, GCO level. Other things are electives. So it was on that basis that we came up with this idea of 6 here. But I mean, obviously then the question is whether we can allow some students to do more than that if they want. So that part we never try to answer in the report.
Yeah. How
I'm
about
not
some students doing
suggesting
less
more than
than?
9.
I think we are
I'm not
talking.
suggesting more than 9. I'm suggesting that 9 is fine. But what are those 9? I mean, you know, for example, why is religion a compulsory core subject to be examined, but IT isn't? Because the vast majority of all the people taking O-level now are going to be using IT in every single aspect of their life. So to have it as an elective seems to me to be ridiculous. Also, if you're good at science, having just general science, which is what the case is at the moment, means there's a massive leap up between O-level and A-level. And so a lot of students end up doing A-level sciences who actually are not suitable for doing sciences, but they've done a general rote learning O-level course, which doesn't really say whether you are well suited to sciences. So I think there needs to be a major overhaul on content, but also on what those subjects are. I'm not saying religion's not important. I'm just saying, is it important to be examined in everybody's case? And should there be as many religion lessons as maths lessons? I'm not convinced about that at all.
Okay, thanks. With that, I want to go to Mr. Pereira, whose hand has been up for a while. Mr. R.C. Pereira, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you well. Yes, Doctor.
Oh, sorry, I am looking at...
Sorry.
Please.
Sorry. Dinesha Pereira.
Okay, Mr. R.C. Pereira is the one who has had the hand up. Yuresha, am I correct? Well, he's not responding. So, Dinesha, why don't you go ahead then? Do you have a question or?
No.
Oh, okay, fine. So then we go to Sifan, whose hand is also up. Sifan, are you there?
I think he's left the room.
Okay.
He's trying to join in again.
Okay. Until then, we'll go back to Reverend Billy Moria, and then we'll come back to Sifan.
Thank you, Doctor. This just to take us on a little, different route on the same subject. Now we are talking here of senior secondary purely from an academic point of view, and what we have been looking at assumes that every child who does senior secondary is academically strong and will go on to A-level and the next stage of his education. One of the things that some of us are concerned about is that we need to look at this stage evaluation that is not just academic, but an evaluation that will also take into consideration the strengths of a child that may not be academic strengths for various reasons. So, involvement in co-curriculars, whether they are sports or clubs and societies, the development of certain other skills that are outside of this academic testing system that we have been so used to over the years. Where does that fit into the senior secondary structure, and where should it fit in? Because should we not think of the child who is not academically strong, the slow learner, or even the child who may not have an interest in this academic achievement thing that we have got so used to and that we are talking about? Thank you.
Has Dr. Mampitiya left? Are you there?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you answer Rebel's question, please?
No, I think if I mean that I did not touch upon that side, but I remember the Sujata. We were in a committee some time back where we proposed some school leaving certificate.
Yes.
Where actually the GC already component. Sujata, you want to say it?
Yeah. Tana, can I share my screen and show that? Because I think, Reverend, I think we did that. Just let me share the screen, and that's exactly what I think. Maybe I did not get it across well.
I may have missed that before. I joined a little late. So
yes. May I please show that? Yeah, this is the current framework. It's just a bunch of subjects. This is the proposed framework, the senior secondary school certificate. will have four components, and one is aptitude test, which everybody should do to show their literacy, numeracy for that level. And the core subjects, it's very interesting. I think what the principal Trinity College was saying, actually science has one subject, whether we should have 3 subjects and all that. We need to discuss that. But the school level, students can opt to do the 6 core subjects at the school level assessments, and they may not necessarily sit for the GC. They may not be pressured to do GCO level. This could be, I think, in place of GCO level, they might have 6 core subjects. If they feel that's enough for their CV when they look for a job soon after 16 or whatever, they can just take the pressure of the GCO level. And the electives they'll be, based on field books and portfolios. And this is where formative assessments. So they are if they say, this person is strong in this area, there'll be a portfolio of all kinds of achievements added to that. So additional, this is what I call additional opportunity to develop transversal competencies, or Upali was saying, what we call basic competencies, common competencies. These are things that transcend subjects knowledge. So this is really the opportunity, and I'm thinking some children, they may choose to just forget about GCO level and focus on their electives and have nice portfolio and a good, basic literacy, and that they're committed. Getting marks in a subject and going to exam shows some sort of ability to continue with something. So they may show their school record may be enough for the subjects, and they may just have their field books and portfolios. So when they leave school, senior secondary school, this is something I want to ask Upali, whether this is realistic to give the students the option of not sitting for GCO level.
No, what I would like to see is actually the completion certificate is promoted, senior secondary. I mean, the recognition should be for senior secondary school certificate, not just for O-level. Right now, it's the GCO level is the qualification that they have to show. But value should be given, the recognition should be given for senior secondary school certificate. All 4 components. GCO level is only a part of it. Yeah.
I mean, Doctor, if I may, Mr. Fowler mentioned a very key term which resonates, this whole thing of rote learning. Is that not what we want to move away from? And doesn't it therefore mean that whatever we propose in terms of reform to the system should take us a little more away from the temptation to just regurgitate what is learned through rote and reproduce at an exam or at an evaluation, and also look at other things that can be drawn. I understand this field books, portfolios, and all that under the electives being optional, but my concern is that there is still a requirement here for some form of academic weightage, even at senior secondary level, and not so much other things that can contribute to a more all-round product. I may be wrong, but I'm just putting it out there.
I would have this aptitude exam that Sujata has put on the extreme left of the chart, where we are looking for the first time at the possibility of a scholastic aptitude test starting from primary, which is like a major paradigm shift. And I think addressing what Dr. Andrew Fowler also said, bringing in a scholastic aptitude test, right now we just have a semblance of a SAT in the form of the post A-level, that is the common general test. I mean, that's by no means a typical SAT. So if these SATs are brought in the way a SAT should, I would imagine, Sujata, correct me if I'm wrong, that the rote learning component will be very little if you're looking at testing for aptitudes.
I would think so. I think Mr. Suravir was saying now, even for vocational education, there was a very good study by Alison Wolf in UK, and what she found is schools that offered vocational training in school, the system of vocational training in school has failed because they have failed to focus on the basics, that you can't do anything without a basic some sort of basic cognitive development and some literacy and numeracy. You need some numeracy. You can't get away from that. So I think that's why this SAT is there. You can have it at 2 different levels. For the scholarship, this SAT 1, you have the basic essential learning competencies in math and language here. Then you can have a paper 2, which tests them at a higher level, and they can use it for the scholarship. So you can do both with the same test, paper 1 and paper 2. So as I said, I'm not sure whether some students will be just doing the SAT. Everybody has to do the SAT and show their literacy numeracy. And as actually, Upali, I remember in National Education Commission, every report they talk about every paper having 2 levels, not just paper 1 and paper 2 to test different things, but 2 levels of cognitive development. So SAT, again, all this can have 2 levels, first level, basic. Yeah. Upali?
That's the model we have proposed for currently for GC O level. I mean, the paper 1 and paper 2. If I remember correctly, it was during Dr. Taradimel's time, it was first proposed as University Secretary, but it was implemented on recently, 2015, yeah. So that model.
Usually paper 1 is multiple choice and the other one is
not multiple choice, basically it's well defined. Basically it's essential learning concepts of mathematics identified. And the assessment level is also in terms of Bloom's taxonomy, first 3 levels sort of, yeah. Well defined.
In paper 1,
I
see.
Yeah,
and
yeah. So, yeah.
Paper 2, the next 2 levels.
Next, yeah.
Right. So it is accepted in principle.
Yes, it has been practicing now for 5 years now.
I see. Okay.
So just to remind everybody that we'll be sharing these presentations with you all because this is still work in progress, and this would be the kind of structure we are thinking of. But we will, I'm sure Dr. Mampitiya won't mind sharing the slides. Sujata has already agreed to do that. So we'll share it with everybody so that you could read it at leisure and also revert back to us. Sifan, are you there? You had wanted to speak earlier, but I can't see you now. Mr. Pereira, are you there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right, please go ahead. Your mic needs to be unmuted, Mr. Pereira.
Okay. Sorry, thank you. This is actually not a question. I like to make a few comments about this. I'm one of the person who advocate for abolishing grade 5 exam, because it's whatever we try to do will be a lot of. Can you listen? Can you hear me?
Yes. This is unclear. If you can please.
Yeah.
Okay.
So grade 5 exam has become a very exam-oriented thing. The primary education has become exam-oriented just because of the grade 5 exam. Just to give an example, now to take they have identified 34 competencies, and for the first term of grade 1, they have identified 3 competencies related to environment, health, and play. But I know most of the schools, from the very first week, they start asking children to write letters, because that is the main thing. They want to train students for grade 5 exam. So the whole thing is focused on grade 5, from grade 1 to grade 5. So whatever the competency is given, they are very good, but teachers never focus on them. Their main idea is to train these students for grade 5 exam and tell the people, parents, that we have so many grade 5 exam qualifiers. So what I suggest is to have a elementary type education. I think most of the countries, developed countries, they don't have any kind of exam. Even some countries, they don't use textbooks. That's what I learned from these international programs. Anyway, if we can have a elementary type of education up to grade 8 without any exam pressure-free curriculum, that will be very good for their upbringing and total development of personality. The other thing is about the O level and A level. Now, at certain stage, sometime back, we had this selection of streams in grade 9. So grade 9 and 10, they followed either science or arts or commerce. So for science, they learned chemistry, biology, physics, and things like that. And same thing they followed in the grade A level also. So actually, they are learning. They are following 4 years for the same subject. So that's the burden on the students are very minimal. Now they follow a general education, general curriculum for up to 11, and for 2 years they have to qualify for A level. Only 2 years they have got. I think this is one of the reasons for this tuition problem also. So if we can have that kind of thing up to 8, you have this elementary type of education and can have an aptitude test at that level. So students can, I think, exam department is trying to develop a student profile now. That's what I heard. So if they can develop a student profile, so when they come to grade 8, and that will be a very useful instrument to identify their skills. And plus that we can have the aptitude test, and from that they can be directed to the relevant stream. Then if you can have that 4-year course, either science or arts, or and then we have this vocational stream now. I like to ask one question from Dr. Sujata. This vocational stream is directed towards university education, university courses, but it's not a stream for A level now, as I understand. But they will have NVQ qualification, which can be used to enter for a college of technology or some other institute. Is it?
I think Mr.
Yeah, thanks. Sujata, would you want to respond to that quickly?
Yeah, I will respond the first two, but vocational one, I'd like Mr. Suravira to respond. I think the general education question is something whether you get children to specialize from early age, but also right now we are talking about 6 subjects only, and for O level. So there's more time for focusing on 6 subjects. Actually, I would go for 5, taking religion and values for a more not an exam-based subject, but a self-directed, learning through projects and themes kind of subject. So general education, I don't think we could get more specific than that unless when we go to 5 subjects for the GCO level. Scholarship exam, actually what we are proposing for parents, because there's a big difference whether you get your child to a national school or not. Whether your child is smart or not, going to a national school is what determines whether they're going on to further education, so higher education. So I don't think abolishing it is, we don't recommend that. That's why we are proposing this change, where you will not be tested on the environment subject. One of the biggest things that really distort the teaching and learning process in primary education is the environment curriculum being tested at the national level, where they have to, right now it's thematic. Every 2 weeks they go with a theme, animals around us. It can be learned in a really fun way. Right now it's about learning by heart all the animals and their properties. So once all that testing is out, which we are proposing, then I think even with the scholarship exam, the teaching learning process can happen the way the primary education should happen. So for the vocational training part, whether the vocational stream is going to, what it's going to lead to, maybe Dr. Mampitiya or Mr. Suravira can answer that. Mr. Suravira? Yeah.
Mr. Suravira, do you want to answer that question?
or Dr. Mampitiya?
His mic is not.
Yes, yes.
Mr. Surya, Hari.
Yes, Mampitiya. No, vocational, that question was not clear to me. Is that okay? Could you explain?
Yeah, the vocational track in the schools, where does this lead to?
Yes, then now present situation is this. Vocational stream in school, they do 1 year in the school, 1 year in the school, that is soft skill as well as some vocational. Thereafter, they are sent to our institution, vocational training institute, to second year to get the NVQ level 4 qualification. Now that is happening. Many students are problem is, it is good if a student could be captured in the school itself. If they go to industry, they go to, now present system is, our traditional system is, after school they roam somewhere around, and after some time, after failing all the attempts, they come to vocational training. Soon after school, if they can be captured in the school, in itself, and then directed to vocational training, that is good in one way. Problem is that 13-year education, that vocational training subject in school is not very well established. Not very well established, because establishing a vocational training in school, it takes time. Even our sector, my opinion is, VT sector is poorer than the general education and higher education. Why? Because they have started, other two sectors have started their investment in 1940s. Significant investment after 1990s, last 3 decades only. Still we are struggling to get the recognition for these centers. Now if they start vocational training to establish those facilities to recognize level, at least my opinion is, at least it takes 25 years. Therefore I do not recommend that. That is because it is not practically possible. Instead we have to capture them to our centers soon after school. That mechanism should be developed, and our centers should be further strengthened. Okay, thank you. I hope so I answered. Any clarification I can further explain.
We have 2 people with their hands up for a while now. Janaka is one. Janaka, can you hear me? You need to unmute your mic.
Yeah, Tara. Yeah. Thanks. Thanks, Tara. I have a couple of comments. First, I'd like to kind of say, I mean, I agree with what Mr. Fowler said. Having had a local education and an international education, I kind of don't understand the reason for having religion and value education as a core curricular subject. If you're taking this to a internationally standard qualification, but I have a question to Sujata. Now, the paradigm shift that you're proposing is, reducing the burden and making it proportional to the duration of education, and thereby increase the quality of the education, right? But when you are adding this SAT in addition to what you already have, that is ordinary level and advanced level, aren't you increasing the burden as opposed to decreasing the burden on the students? That's one question. And also, I'd like to pick up on something that Mark said earlier. You're developing this policy proposal, which is very good, which is important. The government should hear from everyone. But what's the end game? How do you take this to the implementation level? I mean, how do you influence the people who make decisions on these? Because Sujata said that there should be a council of ministers instead of just one minister. But I disagree with that, because I think we just need one minister. We are already burdened with too many people, you know, unqualified, I mean, underqualified people trying to make decisions. A couple of comments and questions I had, mainly to Sujata, I guess.
Yeah. Tara, shall I respond? Yeah. The one minister question, actually, we looked at countries, Australia, UK, and states, and about 9 countries in Asia. We are the only country where we have 3 ministries for education. Actually, some ministries, you know, higher education was with highways once, and now with water. And if you look at other countries, education is under one ministry, I think, except in Malaysia, where they have a separate ministry for higher education. So definitely what we need is a one ministry. And actually, I saw in the news the other day, President had asked about that. What do you think of, I think Reverend Mark could tell us, you know, whether what do you think about one minister of education? I think it is a must. But if it is not possible, you know, because you always have to give these ministerships to people, then only we could talk about a council of ministers. But there has to be a chair, and that chair should be accountable to the parliament for an annual report on the state of education, covering this whole framework I talked about. So yes, ideally it's one minister for education. Yes, that is the norm. But I think what we said, the council of ministers with a chair, one minister chairing, one cabinet level minister chairing, is just the second plan B, second option. How do we take this? Of course, through the media. We actually just the other day, Mr. Joseph Starling, he called, and I've been talking to him about, we need to get a broad coalition of people, give them these ideas and push it through a broad coalition, through social media, through the media, and directly through policy briefs and so on. So that's a mode. Of course, implementation has to be by the political authority. The thing about the SAT, whether SAT will increase the workload, actually SAT is an exam that you don't have to study for. It's what is left after you learned everything. All my children studied for the SAT. They were at different levels. They prepared at different levels, but they ended up getting the same score because you can't study for the SAT. Literacy and numeracy, it's right throughout all your 3 years of junior secondary, what you learn. It is what you gotten in terms of, you learn math, and you learn math through other things. You learn math through your projects. Whatever is there, the tests are such a nature that you can't study for them. So I don't think it will be a burden. It will be just a aggregation of what they've learned in their career that will be tested. So it will not be an additional burden, I think.
So, Sujata, could you please elaborate on what actually SAT constitute? What does a test look like? Yeah, actually, I wrote some questions for the ACT. They had 2 tests in the USA. For example, it involves a lot of pattern recognition kind of things. So you don't have to, know the subject matter, but you can. It's a lot about patterns and analysis that does not necessarily involve the subject. You might talk about some data from a traffic database. You don't have to know about the subject matter, but you should be able to interpret the data and make some conclusions from those. So in your proposal, there is a test for each of the subjects. Is that what you're proposing? No. Scholastic aptitude test is, and this is based for literacy, numeracy, and general intelligence. General intelligence may not be a part of that, but it's about whether somebody can read and understand and interpret and synthesize text. That is a literacy.
So that will be a
So
different level.
this is something like the university entrance exam in the US, is it?
Yes, set in the US, yes. Then for university entrance in the US, if you want to do, say, physics or follow some specialized subject, you do the advanced placement. Actually, our GCA level is like advanced placement exam. So what I'm saying is GCA level should be an optional thing that you do for advanced placement. You want to pursue a career in engineering, then you take those subjects. But to have a school leaving certificate, you need this aptitude test and your school-based assessment, the weekly reports of the term test, and your portfolio and your project reports and others material that show the breadth of your learning.
Sujata, at that point, can I just interrupt you? Because Reverend Vidya wants to leave, but he needs to quickly give a response to what Januka asked. And Sujata, your screen is covering you. I don't know whether you
Thank you.
Over to you, Reverend.
Thank you. Just to respond to both Sujata and what Januka also asked, I think there's a concerted effort this time to share the proposals with as many stakeholders as possible before the reforms are implemented. And so His Excellency at the meeting on Monday, he insisted that there be a process of dialogue with the stakeholders before these reforms are actually finalized. And he said, look, we need to do that because otherwise there will be different quarters having different issues with whatever is proposed. So I think that process of dialogue and consultation will happen. Hopefully it will happen in the coming months. So if that happens, then the conversation that we are having now can also probably feed into that process. So that there will be a comprehensive view that is finally shared, and the final document will be something that has taken into consideration all the views out there through that process of dialogue. So hopefully that will happen, because that's what he has said. On the point of the one minister, it was clear that he is keen to have one minister. And we don't know how it will pan out after the elections, but the view he expressed openly that day in the presence of all those people was that, do we need three ministers? Because there's a minister for vocational, there's a minister for higher education, and there's a minister for education. So I think the view is one minister for all those three areas. One final thing on the issue of vocational before I finish, since it has been already discussed, I think there has to be a huge change in the way vocational education is viewed, especially by the parents, the teachers, and the students. Because as an educator, I know, and I'm sure the other principals on this forum would agree, the moment you talk about vocational education and advise children about vocational education, there is this perception that vocational education is for those who are duds, those who can't do academic work. And which is not the case. I mean, it's a totally wrong idea. So we need to start changing perceptions as well about vocational education, especially among the parents who think, okay, if my son is a dud or my daughter is unable to pass the O-levels, then she'll go into vocational, which is just not the way that we need to encourage the thinking on vocational. So that shift in thinking also has to come. Thank you very much, Dr. Tara.
Thank you. Lasanta has been with his hand up for a while. Lasanta, sorry for the delay.
Well, I need to what Reverend Mark said. Actually, we know that general perception in the society that have actually, yes, my son is failed oral exam. That's why he is now going for a vocational course. Rather giving that kind of outlook to the vocational training, again, I am saying that what would happen if we can actually, after O levels, if we can give certain space in the A level streams to the certain vocational subject, vocational courses, aligning with the NVQ level 3, which is certificate level. I can't say that actually we can bring all the vocational training to the school setup into the A level streams, but we can select these are the possible training courses we can actually accommodate into the A level streams. Then actually after the O level, children can come to the school with a uniform, just like they are coming as A-level students, then we are giving a kind of a A-level outlook to the vocational training. Even after that, actually, they can go for NVQ 4 as diploma according to the results of the A-level. That means the vocational training subject. If it is not possible, what is the mission? What is the mission of the education? That means our school system to promote vocational education, because we know that in general the school teachers are not promoting vocational courses, because they might think that then our children will be more attracted by vocational course and giving low priority to the education. So because we were trying to promote in the school system about the vocational training, at that time there was a challenge that teachers and the principal tend to think that at that time our children get kind of a get low motivation to the our school subject and the exam, then they will get low results, because every school has a kind of a competition, because they are given a kind of a target you have to achieve this time. O-level students, the A-level examination, this percentage. So I am just thinking that if we are not in a position to actually integrate vocational subject into the school setup, so what is the task and what is the accountability in the school education system to promote the vocational education after O-levels or A-levels? So that is my actually issue at this point. Thank you.
Who will answer that? Will it be Sujata or?
Yeah, Mr. Suravya.
Yes. Now,
after that, Dr.
Yeah, it is good that this perception of the parents and student could be changed. Now, establishing, I explained even earlier, establishing vocational training in the school, vocational subject in the school need very high investment. Very high investment according to the capability of the investment pattern of the government. I do not see that level of investment coming to the vocational training, vocational education subject in the school. Even 13-year education has that problem, because they have recruited teachers, but facilities are not established. It takes a lot of time. That is why it is not possible. That your proposal is good, but implementation not that rosy. It is not possible in the possible future. But instead, of course, now we have established the vocational training stream, academic stream, as well as vocational training stream. There are students even now after O-level, students are telling that to their parents, I cannot do O-level. That some parents have contacted me. Then I explained them the stream available. They went to the vocational training stream and became successful. Now that stream is available up to the degree that is available. Now actually we have to promote this concept and now student to convince to choose this. That is the most practical way, because these things are already developed. Of course, so many weaknesses are there. So many weaknesses, as there are many weaknesses are in education. Tibet also, vocational training also, there are so much of weakness. Those things should be developed. But it is actually now this vocational stream is available. In parallel school, there is a technical streams. It is almost vocational. That engineering, technology, and biosystem technology, those things are there. Those who have aptitude for those things. Now we have opened our courses for them. They can directly join with our Uniotech as well as the College of Technologies for level 5 courses, NVQ. Thank you.
Can I add something, Tara?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, because I think the vocational term has come to mean blue collar jobs. But if you look at the, 50% of our GDP is from services. So there are so many vocations that are not blue collar. And I think, Mr. Suravya, I think in the first year, what they teach are the core courses, which are general courses, general curriculum for the vocational. So I don't think you need a lot of investment in the school for that. And also, Mr. Lasant, I don't know whether you followed my presentation. There is a vocation track already that was introduced by the last count. So what Mr. Suruvir is saying is, there's the investment, it's not has time to establish. And I think the term vocational, I think is a problem. However much we try to, however much investment, another 20 years, even in Germany, where their vocational system is highly regarded, but now they have to hang a degree at the end, otherwise they can't attract students. That is the reality.
Yeah,
because so what I'm saying is, let's have a system of junior colleges which cater to all certificate 1, certificate 2, diploma and advanced diploma. So this is one junior college system, and within that you can offer NVQs, you can offer diplomas in say event management. I mean, that is a vocational course, but that's not blue collar. So it's the issue is people think vocational as being electricians, that kind of work, bricklaying, furniture building. And I think the vocational is the term now we have to make it more like just a junior college, and whether you, and also there should be options from going from junior college to university, that laddering should be there. So they can take additional, if they, some children mature later, then they can take some more academic courses and ladder into the academic stream. So in this framework, I sort of put forward as a preliminary idea. I think what we should have is a one junior college system under which umbrella all these NVQ programs, we have H&D programs for various subjects, logistics. You can get a diploma in logistics, which is a vocational training. So I think we are stuck. It's available. That's what I'm saying. And
even under 13-year education, it is available.
Yeah, that's right. So, but I think
please don't call them junior colleges, because that is so insulting to call them junior colleges. Immediately you're just building into that idea that they're not quite the real thing. So I like your idea, but please call them something different. But also I agree with you entirely, Sujata, that the whole word vocation should go, because that is the pejorative word. That is the word that is putting parents off, and which teachers say so rather rudely as well. And I agree with Mark Villamoria on that getting parents and teachers to actually understand that vocation, for want of a better word, is just as important as anything else. I would say medicine is a vocation. Teaching is a vocation if it's done properly. So it's not just about who's going to be an electrician or a stonemason or whatever it is, far from it. And things like technology, which cover everything from very basic level IT up to Nobel Prize winning IT. That is a vocation, but it's also much more than that. So the whole word and concept needs to change, and we need to get into schools earlier. I agree that it needs to be much earlier. If we wait until A-levels or after A-levels, the horse has bolted. You need to actually start developing the idea of these careers being worthy careers when children are maybe 13, 14, and where their parents are that much more receptive before they get into this O-level, A-level drag, which hits so quickly. So I agree with what's being said. I just think that it's a way, it's going to be difficult to do because it's changing a mindset. And also, as Sujata said, it's expensive. So it's going to take a long time if you're going to try and bring in training into schools. But I think it's a mindset change which doesn't cost money. It needs training, retraining, and a change of people's values and understanding of where the world is going, and of the fact that so many jobs haven't been invented yet that our youth today are going to be doing.
Thanks for that, Andrew. We have about 15 minutes more before we go on to the wrap-up and conclusion. There are others who have raised their hands but who have not said anything.
Tara, before we move on, can I say something about
yes,
this
yes.
vocational? Yeah.
Yes.
So
yes.
Yeah, I think Lasantha hit the nail on the head. I mean, I guess we all are talking about the same thing. That is, how do we improve the brand recognition of vocational training? For example, I think the quality is already there. At least for certain programs, if you take German Tech and NDT, these are really high quality programs. But I don't think that brand recognition is there. How do you improve that? That's the question, I think. Even Andrew, I think, talked about the same thing. Even by changing the name, you might be able to improve that. I guess one thing that you can look at is the TAFE system in Australia. You know, they call it the technical and further education. And there are different certificate levels and diploma levels built into the system, and that can eventually get you into a university. So I think, you know, talking about vocational training, you know, I think what's missing is brand recognition. This is something that we can improve in the future, I guess.
Okay. Thanks. Anybody else who wants to make an input at this stage? Because there have been we have about 20 people on the forum, but yes, Janaka?
Yeah, can I add something here?
Yes, please.
My concern is, see, as an employee, if I say, I remember I came down to Sri Lanka selecting some employees for the company, then we understood that the candidates who came to the interview, they had qualifications. Yeah, they had different qualifications, but those who did not go to university, they did not know what proper qualification should they have to meet the requirement. My concern here is for students who are doing O-levels or finish O-levels and A-levels, do we have a proper system to guide them? I mean, those are students who are children. Maybe they do not know what to study next, what to do next. And right now what's happening, what I understood is they are guided by their parents, but sometimes not all parents are educated to guide them to a proper destination. I'm talking about the begin with the end in mind. I think Dr. Sujata would remember we had the discussion in social media. What is the guidance we can give to the children? Like you once proposed an index or a magazine or a book, something that we can publish and give to children who like to go after O-levels and A-levels. And this is about awareness and education. In what I understand is, see, after A-levels, what is the stream? Or after O-levels, what are the subjects that child gonna select and how it relates to his destination? Does he know really what to study to reach that goal? And if I say, we can see when I see a UK level 7 qualification like CIM, we see many of them have done bioscience. I mean, come from bioscience, mathematics background and ended up in marketing UK level 7. So there, if you talk to a CEO, some CEOs and CFOs, especially in here in I'm in Middle East, if you see my colleagues who are working in strategic level, sometimes they did not follow the correct path, but they ended up because of the experience and their competencies, resources and competencies. We are talking about the competencies and the resources. How can we develop and how can we guide them? What is the roadmap? This is the concern I would like to raise. And yes, I think Mr. Susanta correctly said, yes, I think Mr. Susanta correctly said that there are pathways already established, but who knows? I mean, are we doing the correct awareness? I'm not talking about the investment. I'm talking about the awareness. It's about awareness. Are we correctly doing the awareness campaigns and educating people about what are the paths and options they have? And also, let me put another question. Like, there are, see, the capabilities that brought us to this level, maybe they are not relevant to tomorrow. For example, if I say, one said that IT is a very important aspect which we are not focusing much on, And more than IT, I would say like digital communications. Are we giving these skills to students, children? Are we giving the correct enough focus on them, educating students on digital communication, entrepreneurship? Because if you come to a company, when we interview a person, sometimes, yeah, we do value the certificate. Rather than that, we have to test their attitude. We are testing their attitude, decision-making capabilities, entrepreneurial thinking. If you say, if you go to CIM UK level 7 qualification, there is a qualification, there is a subject on creating entrepreneurial change. But it is been recognized as one of the major subjects or concerns, focuses. My question or my concern to you is, what are the possibilities that we can give our children the guidance after A levels? What is your field or the industry relevant to industry? How can we educate them or guide them? For example, I feel the A-level students who go after A-levels, who do not go to the university, are left alone. I mean, they do not know what to do and the guidelines. Thank you.
I think that's one of the things Sujata mentioned at the outset about off the radar. And I think basically you're talking about career guidance and counseling, career guidance mainly at different levels of the education system. Does anyone want to make a quick response to Sujata? Mic is on mute.
Mute. Okay. Right? Okay. Sorry. Yes, actually, they are off the radar.
100%.
Yes. And I think we did publish something called After A Levels, and looking at all the options available, degree opportunities. But I think that should be, we wanted somebody, some government, we want the newspapers, we want chamber to take it over, but nobody did. But I think the ideal body is the National Youth Services. They should be responsible for all students from 16 to 22 or whatever they call the youth. So that is ideal body. And I think they should be responsible for pulling all these opportunities together and informing students. And also, I think we need to get rid of these vertical silos. That's what I'm saying. Horizontally, we need to define the certificate level courses, certificate 1, 2, diploma and advanced diploma. Not call them vocational, technical, but just these are certificate courses, these are diploma courses, this is advanced diplomas, and these are degree courses. You may not like the junior college idea, but what we need is some authority for that mid-level. Right now, the Tertiary and Vocational Education Commission is handling that mid-level. I think its task has to be expanded and to cover all the certificate and diploma and advanced diploma courses. So I think, yes, there has to be...
It's not that I don't like the idea, Sujata. I do like the idea, and I agree with you entirely about horizontal rather than vertical. It was just simply that word.
What word would you suggest for that layer? Let's
no
think about
idea.
that.
Let me think about it.
Yeah, please do think about that, because I think that layer, in the US, it's called community college, but Mr. Suravira made a very good point. Community college is really looking at your locality and offering courses like, say, he gave a very good example, kottu making, how to make kottu, be a good kottu chef. You can just have in your local junior college, you can have these short-term courses. These are serving the community. But the junior college qualifications they should be dealing with certificate 1, 2, diploma and advanced diploma in, whatever is good for that areas. We need some name for that level, which does not have vocational or technical in that. Yeah. Because there are lots of diploma, lots of vocations that are not, blue collar. They are white collar. And blue collar, there'll be attraction if the, wages and if the remuneration and the qualification, name of the qualification changes. So I think attitude change will come with some structural changes, even some cosmetic changes.
So we'll also invite...
It's like the old, before universities were all banded together in the UK, you had universities and polytechnics, and that's basically what you're saying, I think. And I would agree with that. the sort of polytechnic idea, which can give up to a degree level in all sorts of areas, but it's a slightly different path. It is a more practical path, if you like, than a pure academic one. But anyway, I'll give it some thought.
Yeah, thank
But
you.
I like the idea. Don't get me wrong.
Thanks very much. Just one other question coming out of Janaka's input was jobs for tomorrow. He mentioned digital communication and similar. Whether Dr. Mampitiya has a response to that, whether that was included in your presentation.
No, actually, I did not include it. But thing is, I mean, similar to what we did for the senior secondary education. In my presentation of this Kannakara Memorial Lecture, I include collegiate level also. So in that, certain things are discussed related to ICT.
Yeah, I think what he meant was like, you know, the classical jobs that are discussed in terms of, you know, like AI and robotics and digital communication and so on. But that is probably included in that component of the collegiate section. Am I correct?
Yeah, yeah. And also, actually, let me just share this slide with you quickly.
Yeah.
While you're sharing,
Yeah,
you know, we have
in this one here.
Mm.
So basically, we are proposing actually IC to be considered during this senior secondary also, but we don't go into detail actually here. So you can see under other activities, certain number of periods to be allocated for that one as well. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. Sifan had a question. Sifan, can you?
Yes. Am I visible now?
Yes, you are visible.
Okay, right, yeah. So I had actually a few points. One was a quick thing on this SAT type tests, and if you are modeling it on the US, especially because there is a growing concern in the US that SAT scores are actually highly correlated to income levels. So using those for university admissions is leading to further disadvantaging people who are already disadvantaged, and therefore more and more universities are moving away from that and don't require SATs and ACTs for the admission process. But the 2 points I wanted to maybe go into a bit more on. So on this whole system of portfolio for evidence of attainment of the transversal skills or the soft skills, separate from the academic knowledge, this is something I think is really good because the soft skills are really important, although it's much harder to put a benchmark and say your creativity score is 75 or your communication skill is 72 or anything like that. And it sort of builds on also what somebody, I can't remember the name, was saying about the interviewing process, how when the recruitment happens, employers are really looking for these attributes or soft skills. And sometimes even if they're trying to, whether it's a school leave or whether it's somebody who has a degree, when they're doing their selection, they look at these things to differentiate and they try to do something within the space of the interview, which is, I think, not very successful because, you know, meeting somebody for the first time, you have a few interactions with them. How do you really gauge all these things? So having this portfolio would be really useful for people to say, so when it came to project management, when it came to entrepreneurship, when it came to creativity, these are some of the things I did while I was in school, while I was in university, and then that would add a lot of value to that. But until we get there and there's a lot of credibility around this portfolio, I'm worried that what might happen is because we are in this environment of this really exam focus and wanting to do well and wanting to say, you know, my son came first and had this Z score and all those sort of things, that what might happen instead is that people just use the time for these other things also for the academic subjects. Like shortly after I left Morato University, they introduced this thing called non-GPA subjects. So you do the subjects, but it doesn't count for your GPA. And what everybody did was they just showed up for those classes, but that's it, right? You just do the bare minimum to get by because you know it doesn't count for your GPA, and everybody wants the GPA because that's what determines whether you get the first class or the second class upper lower sort of things. So some sort of perception management, I don't know, something needs to happen to make this thing work and not just be neglected and then they just study for the exams because they want to get the ranks and things. And then the other point relates to the scholarship exam, which there wasn't that much discussed, but there was a couple of questions about it. So on the ministry's report for 2019 scholarship exam, the success rate, that is where you get to go to a better school, is 22% if you are already from a high income group. And that means you are likely in a decent school to begin with, and only 9% if you are from a low income group. So even though there is a lot of value attached to it, saying that this is the only chance for these people to get into a good school, the chance is actually very, very low. And then the IPS study, I think that's the one that Dr. Sujata was referring to. So I think this was about 2018 results, but when you take year 6 admissions of national schools, only 22% comes from the scholarship. So the rest is people who already joined those schools in year 1 to 5. And even that number is only so high because there are some schools that are only secondary schools. So if you actually consider the if you exclude them and you think of the schools that already had primary admissions, it's only 13% of that intake comes from the scholarship. And for the good provincial schools, that scholarship intake is only 3%. So although the scholarship exams gives people a chance, it doesn't give people much of a chance. So sort of my thoughts on that is, if we are, because I don't think in this sort of backdrop you can scrap it. Even whatever you might say about all the pressure it puts on kids and things like that, parents will not accept it being scrapped. So one of the ways to actually reduce the pressure and to make it sort of more meritocratic, I think, is that over a period, the national schools and these good provincial schools should reduce their own primary intake. So you close down a class, next year you close down 2 classes, things like that. So you reduce the intake you have at year 1 to 5, and the teachers and whatever resources that were freed up, the space could be used to take more children to secondary. The teachers can be transferred to schools that continue to offer primary education. So then the statistics will improve. So you'll have from 9% going up to 15 to 25 to 30% chance of getting into a good school from a poor family, and then more and more shares of the school coming to students who deserve it. And eventually you could probably get to the level of having distinct primary schools and secondary schools, so sort of Kannangara's idea of the central schools, and maybe even to the level that over some period this gets developed to the level where you have enough good central schools that can absorb all the primary output of the primary schools in the catchment area. So you don't, whether you have a scholarship exam or not, you get a good secondary school. So this whole scholarship thing should only be a stopgap until you have that. When we come to that level, we could probably say that you then will remain in your home district. So you'll not have somebody transferring like from Polonnaru to Colombo because they passed the scholarship exam and you're uprooted from your family and things like that. Those are the inputs I wanted to give.
Thanks very much, Sipan. We have just about 10 minutes or a little less than that. If there is any other important comment to make, otherwise we can go ahead with the wrap up.
Can I make a quick comment about what Sifan just said?
Yes.
About year 5 scholarships. Now, I feel like my understanding is that these scholarships were, when they were first implemented, the whole idea was to promote educational mobility. And that is basically providing, higher quality education for underprivileged kids. But I feel like it's that, that original objective has been lost already by making it, available to, all students, regardless of their level of privilege. But from what Sifan said, it looks like there are at least, he said that 22% of these opportunities go to already privileged kids, and only 9% is.
Sorry, just to
is that correct?
No, it's not that if you take the total. So the ministry categorizes whether you were from a high income or low income group. I'm not sure exactly what the threshold is, but reading some other reports, I think it's a very, very low threshold to qualify as a high income group. So they have the statistics on how many high income students set and how many of them qualified to go transfer to a good school. And then likewise in the low income group, how many set and how many qualified. So out of the high income group, 22% did transfer to a better school, of which of course some of them were already in quite a decent school. And of the low income group, only 9% went. So this is quite likely related to the ability to afford tuition, the ability of the parents to support them at home because they themselves have higher degrees, levels of education and things like that.
Yeah, so my proposal is, why don't we make it available to, you rank the schools, you have a national ranking of schools, you can use various parameters, and then you pick whatever the bottommost, percentile, 50, 60 or whatever, and make the scholarship exam available only to those schools so that these kids can move on to better schools.
So the ranking is done by using what index?
Yes, so then.
I think we will have to come up with a new index.
Even if you don't have a precise ranking, the ministry already has some sort of categorization scheme of highly privileged schools,
yeah.
I think underprivileged and severely underprivileged, something like that could be extended. And I think there definitely shouldn't be a reason why somebody going to a really good provincial school or a national school in Kandy would sit the scholarship exam and then come to Colombo or something. But there is a certain amount of pressure from the parents to want to do it, because I don't know whether they want to boast that their child got this score or something like that. And then there's also a certain amount of pressure from the school. So although I don't know the schools involved, like somebody was saying that there are schools in Colombo who are pressurizing their parents to prepare the students for the scholarship exam this year because they want to show that we have good results or whatever it is. And the parents are like, my child is already in a good school, I don't need the stress. But there are those sort of dynamics that are coming in as well.
Exactly, that's one of the points I wanted to make. There's humongous cultural pressure on the kids, just because that this is available to every kid.
Okay, I think with that we have just about 5 minutes. So before we wrap up, is there anything that either of our presenters wants to make as a parting comment, Sujata or Dr. Mampitiya? Say anything?
Upali, yeah. Shall I? Yeah.
Please go ahead, Sujata.
Go ahead. No, Upali, you go ahead. Then I'll come after you.
No, I don't have any specific questions. In fact, my presentation was just to support your the slides, and what you have proposed. Yeah, I was just justifying.
Yeah. Actually, this session, this dialogue was about 3 exams. Grade 5, we did not go into detail, but I have to listen to these comments. We have to pick our fights. And I should have said, what's the issue here? One issue is the equity issue. I have not looked at it. I think right now, going into that is going into an area where we have to classify schools and a whole new area. The issue that I've addressed here is, and I think we should address, is that the scholarship exam is how it's corrupting the education process. So to prevent that, that's where take the components that make environmental subject, for example, a rote learning subject, take those questions out of the exam and take it back to what it was before 1994, which is an aptitude exam, and use that exam at 2 levels. One is to make sure that the students, to check whether our students are given the essential learning competency, that is part 1, and part 2, whether they have higher cognitive ability for selecting students for the giving scholarships, whatever. So I think we are not trying to address equity issues here. I think we have to pick our fight. So here it's really looking at just improving the exam so that it does not hurt the teaching and learning process. And I think the portfolio GC O level, we talked about reduce the number of subjects and releasing time for more activity-based, project-based, thematic learning. And I take Januka's point, no, not Januka Sifan. These people might just use that time to spend on, you know, they are preparing for exams. That very well could happen. For scholarship, we had one idea, which was to to give the scholarships or whatever, you check that student's portfolio has to be complete. So that is one way of making sure that these portfolios are done. So we can tag something that there'll be random testing of these portfolios or something. The schools will be, you know, you wouldn't release results unless these things are done. Somewhere we can have some way of making sure that these portfolios are done, and they are, and then you don't have to grade them. It's for the students' own use. So I think those are the reforms for the GC O level. And GC A level, I don't think we talked anything at this point, but I think this level of idea of, you know, going from vertical silos to horizontal silos, I really like your ideas. More on those. I like to talk to Mr. Suravira more on that, and we will come up with an improved structure. From what I gained today, I think we need to present that better, because people did not quite seem to understand that framework, and some questions were asked which were really already in the framework. So what I learned here is that we need to communicate better.
Also, like based on the framework, the slides will be shared, as I said, but if there is anything that you would like to give in addition to what the speakers said, in addition to what the interventions were, mentioning the different sectors, if there are any recommendations or anything that you think is worthwhile in the context of what was presented or otherwise, it'll be really useful for us. So I think very basically the whole structural change in the framework suggested needs to be thought of very carefully before we make the final recommendation, and the necessity for accountability. We spoke about the dropouts, but we didn't go into depth, because now we know that there are diverse reasons for the dropouts. Maybe some outweigh the others. So the dropout issue is important, but then again, that I don't think we'll be able to take on in depth. We all agree there's a need for change in the quality and the content, the reduction of content, how it should be reduced, how it should be positioned, all of that. So what I would really earnestly request from every one of you is to send whatever suggestions, whatever questions you have on all those components. Refocusing the necessity to invest and emphasize the need for the technical education and the technical stream that was mentioned repeatedly. And this word vocation, we all agree that that's something, it can mislead, it gives a different connotation. So what exactly should we replace it with? And finally, the necessity to focus on the jobs for tomorrow, particularly in the case of the secondary education, how it should be positioned. So with all of that, like it was mentioned earlier, our job would be, once the final recommendations are prepared in terms of these 3 exams and the content that leads up to that, we will obviously need to disseminate this widely amongst teachers, amongst principals, amongst people like you. You're all influential people who can create influence in different ways. And we will post it on our website, and if possible, and if invited, I'm sure we'll be able to also present it to the government, since the process of education reforms are taking place with the task force. So any comments and any criticisms, comments, recommendations, we are extremely happy to have from you. We hope to send this out to you within the next few days if possible. And thank you very much for connecting with us once again, and also for the people who are joining us for the first time. We hope you will keep connecting with our forums, which we hope to have twice a month. Thank you very much, everybody, and a very good evening to you all.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.